Welcome to JavaScript part functions. When first learning how to calculate the area of a rectangle, there is a sequence of steps to calculate the correct answer. First of all, you need to measure the width of the rectangle, then measure the height of the rectangle, then multiply the width and height of the rectangle. With practice, you can calculate the area of a rectangle without being instructed with these three steps every time. We can calculate the area of one rectangle with this code. Let's run this code in the script part, and here save and check the result in the browser from open file js1 and open console.log. You see area will be 60. Imagine being asked to calculate the area of three different rectangles. If we have multiple rectangles to calculate the area, we have to copy paste and change the variable names, which is very difficult to do. So what's the solution? The solution is functions. In programming, we often use code to perform a specific task multiple times. Instead of rewriting the same code, we can group a block of code together and associate it with a task. Then we can reuse that code of block whenever we need to perform the task again. We achieve this by creating a function. A function is a reusable block of code that groups together a sequence of statements to perform a specific task. In this lesson, you will learn how to create and use functions and how they can be used to create clearer and more concise code. First of all, we need to declare the function. In JavaScript, there are many ways to create a function. One way to create a function is by using a function declaration. Just like how a variable declaration binds a value to a variable, a function declaration binds a function to a name or an identifier. Take a look at the anatomy of a function declaration below. Here, you have the function keyword, then the identifier or the function name, then parentheses, then curly braces, and inside that you can put the commands of your function or the body of function, then close the curly bracket. Here I just create a greet world function, then use that inside the code. Here I define greet world function, and inside that console.log hello world. Again, if I refresh the page, nothing will be printed in the console because I need to call the function. To call a function, you have to type the name of the function in this sample greet world and a parentheses. You see, this command will call this function and run the commands inside this function. So if I refresh the page, I see hello world. It's interesting because the greeting definition or declaration is after the usage of the function. It's the function hosting in JavaScript. So no matter where you define your function with function keyword, you can use it before or after the function declaration. Exercise. Let's create a function that prints a reminder to the console. Using a function declaration, create a function called getReminder. In the function body of getReminder, log the following reminder to the console. Water the planet. Great. Let's create a get reminder function after get running of this code. Get reminder, and inside that console.log water the planet. Oops, I forget the function keyboard before that. Great. This is the get reminder function definition, which logs water the planet. Let's create another function that prints a useful Spanish travel phrase to the console. Using a function declaration, create a function called greeting Spanish. Let's create this function, but before that, let's just call get reminder here and see the result in the console. You see the function called and the command runs. Another function is greet in Spanish. So to define, first of all, type function before, then the name of the function, then parentheses, and then curly braces, and inside that type a command which is console.log hello in Spanish. Then again, to call this function, greet in Spanish, and if I run the code, I see the first function call, which is water the planet, and the second function call, which is hello world in Spanish. Calling a function, as we saw in the previous exercises, a function declaration binds a function to identifier. However, a function declaration does not ask the code inside the function body to run. It just declares the existence of the function. The code inside the function body runs or executes only when the function is called. To call a function in your code, you type the function name followed by parentheses. Here you see greet world, parentheses, semicolon. So this function call execute the function body, I mean the command inside here, or all of the statement between the curly braces in the function declaration. We can call the same function as many times as needed. Exercise. Imagine that you manage an online store. When a customer places an order, you send them a thank you note. Let's create a function to complete this task. Define a function called say thanks as a function declaration. Okay, let's say thanks. Function say thanks. In the function body of say thanks, add code such that the function writes the following thank you message to the console when called. So let's copy this message, and inside here console.log thank you for your purchase. We appreciate your business. Call say thanks to view the thank you message in the console. Do you remember how to call a function? Just type the name of the function, then parentheses. Refresh the page. Thank you for your purchase. We appreciate your business. Function call can be called as many times as you need them. Imagine that 3 customers placed an order and you wanted to send each of them a thank you message. Update your code to call say thanks 3 times. What you need to do is to copy paste 3 times this code and refresh the page. You see, instead of using console.log 3 times, you define this command inside the sayThanks and just call the sayThanks 3 times. Parameter and arguments. So far, the function we've created executes a task without an input. However, some functions can take inputs and use the input to perform a task. When declaring a function, we can specify its parameters. Parameters allow functions to accept inputs and perform a task using the inputs. We use parameters as a placeholder for information that will be passed to the function when it is called. Let's observe how to specify parameters in our function declaration. Imagine we want to implement calculate area. Here, width and height is parameter, and inside the function body you can use the parameter and console.log the result in the console. In the diagram above, console area, calculate area computes the area of a rectangle based on the two input width and height. The parameters are specified between the parentheses as a width and height, and inside the function body they act just like regular variables. Width and height act as a placeholder for values that will be multiplied together. When calling a function that has parameter, we specify the value in the parentheses that follow the function name. Let's create the calculate area in the code editor. Function calculate area, and here we define the parameters. The first one is width, and put a comma to define the second one, which is height. And like regular function, create curly braces, and inside that use console.log, but this time we want to use the parameters width and multiply by height. And here we can use the function calculate area with two different parameters, width and height, like 10 and 20. And if I save the file and refresh the page, I can get the area of this rectangle, which is 200. In the function call, the number 10 is passed as a width and number 6 is passed as a height in this sample. Notice that the order in which arguments are passed and assigned follow the order that the parameters are called. It means 10 replaced with width and 20 replaced with height, and inside the function body, width will be 10 and height will be 20, and the result will be 200. The variable rect width and rect height are initialized with the value of the height and width of a rectangle before being used in the function call. So, by using parameter, calculate area can be reused to compute the area of any rectangle. Functions are a powerful tool in computer programming, so let's practice creating and calling functions with parameters. Exercise. The sayThanks function works well, but let's add the customer name in the message. Add a parameter called the name to the function declaration of sayThanks. Let's get rid of this code, and here function sayThanks, and inside the function parentheses I put the name as a parameter, and inside that console.log, and where need to put the name of the customer, I will use the name parameter. With name as a parameter, it can be used as a variable in the function body of sayThanks. Using name and string concatenation, change the thank you message into the following one. Thank you for your purchase, the name, and will appreciate your purchase. Let's copy this code here. You see, I used plus to concatenate these three strings together. So if I call the function here, say thanks, and say Bob as a parameter will be replaced with name, and thank you for your purchase pipe will be printed in the log. Let's check the result. You see, thank you for your purchase, Bob. I can use as many times I want with different parameter, John, Sarah, Nina, and etc. You see, if I refresh the page, I can use the function say thank you for multiple person. Default parameters. One of the features added in ES6 of JavaScript is the ability to use default parameters. Default parameters allow parameters to have a predetermined value in the case there is no argument passed in the function, or if the argument is undefined when called. Take a look at the code snippet below that uses a default parameter. You can see we have greeting. If name is not specified in calling greeting function, the stranger will be replaced as a different parameter for name. So its syntax is interesting. After name, you put a equal and then the value of the default parameter. Let's copy this code and paste it in the code editor and check the result. Refresh the page, you see hello Nick, because in the first function call, Nick passed as a name, and the second one, there is no argument, then the default, which is a stranger, replaced with name variable, and hello stranger will be printed in the second call of greeting. Exercise. The function makeShoppingList creates a shopping list based on the items that are passed to the function as an argument. Imagine that you always purchase milk, bread, and eggs every time you go shopping for groceries. To make creating a grocery list easier, let's assign defined value to the parameter in the makeShoppingList. Change the parameters of makeShoppingList into default parameters. So let's create makeShoppingList function makeShoppingList, and it has multiple parameters. The first one is item 1, which is milk. Item 2, the default value is bread. And the item 3, which is eggs. And inside the function console.log list, here I want to use literal, backtick literal for item 1, item 2, and item 3, which is more better than concatenation operator. And here I want to call makeShoppingList with empty parameter and check the results. You see the list is milk, bread, and eggs. If I change the milk to something else like paper and refresh the page, the milk, the first parameter will be replaced with the milk, and I have paper, bread, and egg. You can do this for the other parameter, item 3, item 2, for example, flower and item 3, which is oil. Let's refresh and you see all of them replaced with the default parameters. Return. When a function is called, the computer will run through the function code and evaluate the result of calling the function. By default, that resulting value is undefined. Let's check this code and see what happens if we run this code in the console. Here is the function rectangle area, and the result of rectangle area will be printed in the console. Let's check the result. You see the default returning value of the function is undefined. Did we write our function wrong? No, in fact the function worked fine and the computer did calculate the area as a 35, but we didn't capture it. So how can we do that with the keyword return? Here you can see the calculate area need the return area at the end of the function body. So what we need to do is to put return keyword, and the value we want to return is the area, because we calculated the area of rectangle in this command, and this variable has the area and we return it. Here, if I refresh the page, I get 35, which is the area of this rectangle with 5 and 7 as a width and height. To pass back information from the function call, we use return statement. To create a return statement, we use the return keyword, as you see here, followed by the value that we wish to return, which is area in this sample. Like we saw above, if the value is omitted, undefined is returned instead. When a return statement is used in function body, the execution of function is stopped, and the code that followed it will not be executed anymore. For example, in this sample, if you type anything after return, will not run at all. Here you see, if I refresh the page, the command after return will not run anymore. Exercise. Imagine if we needed to order monitors for everyone in an office, and this office is conveniently arranged in a grid shape. We could use a function to help us calculate the number of monitors needed. Declare a function monitor count that has two parameters. The first one is rows and the second parameter is columns. Great. Let's create monitor count with two parameters. Function monitor count. The first parameter is rows and the second one is columns. Part 2. Let's compute the number of monitors by multiplying rows and columns and then returning the value. Here we just return. What we want to return is rows multiplied by columns. In the function body of function, you just wrote use return keyword to return rows multiply column. Now that function is defined, we can compute the number of monitors needed. Let's say that the office has 5 rows and 4 columns. Declare a variable named num of monitors using the const keyword and assign num of monitors the value of invoking monitor count with the parameter 5 and 4. Great. Here I just defined const num of monitors and set it to the result of monitor count function with 5 as a rows and 4 as a columns. Then I just console.log num of monitors in the output. Let's check the result. You see 20 is in the result, is the number of monitor needed in the office. Helper functions. We can also use return value for a function inside another function. This function being called with another function are often referred to as a helper function. Since each function is carrying out a specific task, it makes our code easier to read and debug if necessary. If we wanted to define a function that converts the temperature from Celsius to Fahrenheit, we could write two functions like this. Let's copy this function here. Here we have a function helper which is multiplied by night fifth. What this function do is interesting. It just get a parameter number and return this math expression as a result. So we can use this helper function inside the getFahrenheit function like this. In the return statement of getFahrenheit, I used the helper function multiplied by night fifth and put the value Celsius, which is parameter that passed to the getFahrenheit. And at the end, I just plus if were added with 32. Let's go over this code one more time. GetFahrenheit is called and 15 is passed as an argument. The code block inside of getFahrenheit calls multiply by 95 and pass 15 as an argument. Multiply by 9/5 takes the argument of 15 for the number parameter. The code block inside of multiply by 9/5 function multiplies 15 by 9/5, which evaluates to 27. 27 is returned back to the function call in getFahrenheit. GetFahrenheit continues to execute. It adds 32 to 27, which evaluates to 59. Finally, 59 is returned back to the function call, which call getFahrenheit 15. So if I console.log the running of this function, you can see the result 59. We can use function to section off a small bit of logic or task, then use them when we need it to. Writing helper functions can take large and difficult tasks and break them into a smaller and more manageable tasks. Exercise. In the previous exercise, we created a function to find the number of monitors to order for an office. Now let's write another function that uses the monitor count function to figure out the price. Below, monitor count creates a function declaration named cost of monitors that has two parameters. The first parameter is rows and the second parameter is columns. Leave the function body empty for now. Define function cost of monitor, row, and the body is empty. Time to add some code to function body of cost of monitors to calculate the total cost. Add a return statement that returns the value of calling monitor count row and columns multiply by 200. Okay, let's get the code from the previous exercise. Great, we have the code from previous exercise, and I just add the new function cost of monitor, and inside this function I call the monitor count by rows and columns as argument and multiply the result of running this function to 20, but don't forget to put return before the monitor count function call. And here, instead of calling monitor count, I call the cost of monitor, which is the cost, and put the cost in the output. Let's refresh the page. You see 4K is the cost of monitors for the office. Function expression. Another way to define a function is to use a function expression. To define a function inside an expression, we can use the function keyword. In a function expression, the function name is usually omitted. A function with no name is called an anonymous function. A function expression is often stored in a variable in order to refer to it. Here you can see a function expression, which is way to define a function. Consider the following function expression. To declare a function expression, declare a variable to make the variable's name be the name or identifier of your function. For example, in this sample, I defined const and calculate area and use equal to. Like defining a variable, it's very similar to defining a variable, but the value on the right side is not an string or numbers, it's a function. Assign as the variable value an anonymous function created by using the function keyword followed by a set of parentheses with possible parameters, then a set of curly braces that contain the function body. To invoke a function expression, write the name of the variable in which the function is stored followed by a parenthesis enclosing any argument being passed into the function. Unlike function declaration, function expressions are not hoisted, so they cannot be called before they are defined. Let's define a new function using a function expression. Exercise. Let's say we have a planet that we need to water once a week on Wednesday. We could define a function expression to help us check the day of the week and the planet needs to be watered. Create a variable named planet needs water using const variable keyword. Assign an anonymous function that takes in a parameter of day to planet needs water. So here I define const planet needs water and set it to an anonymous function. This function has no name, just have a parameter which is day, like this. Its function expression. Now we need to add some code to the function body of planet needs water. In the function body, add an if statement that checks day equal to Wednesday. If the condition is true, inside the if code block, use the return keywords to return true. Great. Let's copy the condition and here use if and say the condition inside parentheses and return true. Else return false. On days that aren't Wednesday, planet needs water should return false. Add an else statement after the if statement. Inside the else statement, use the return keyword to return false. Call the planet needs water and pass in Tuesday as an argument. Here I just call planet needs water and Tuesday as argument and refresh the page. Oops, I need console.log to check the results of this function. You see, it's false. If I duplicate this line and set Wednesday, I have true for second column planet needs water. Arrow functions. ES6 introduced arrow function syntax, a shorter way to write function by using a special fat arrow notation. Arrow functions remove the need to type out the function keyword every time you need to create a function. Instead, you first include the parameter inside the parentheses and then add an arrow that points to the function body surrounded in curly braces like this. It's important to be familiar with multiple ways of writing function because you will come across each of these when reading other JavaScript code. Exercise. Change planet needs water to use arrow function syntax. Call, you see here, I just want to convert it from function keyword to arrow function. Just remove the function and after the parameter parentheses put a fat arrow like this. If you check the result, you see the same result. Concise body arrow functions. JavaScript also provides several ways to refactor arrow function syntax. The most condensed form of the function is known as a concise body. We'll explore a few of these techniques below. Concise body arrow functions. Functions that takes only a single parameter do not need that parameter to be enclosed in parentheses. However, if a function takes 0 or multiple parameters, parentheses are required. So in this sample, because we have only one parameter for planet needs water, we can get rid of parentheses and it works. A function, number 2, a function body composed of a single line code does not need curly braces anymore. Without the curly braces, whatever that line evaluates will be automatically returned. The content of the block should immediately follow the arrow and the return keyword can be removed. This is referred to as an implicit return. Here, planet needs water. What I want to do is to remove the curly braces and here I just check the condition, you see, and use ternary operators, return true or return false. Also, I can remove this part too and make it more concise. You see, I want to get rid of this code and this is a very concise function. Let's check the result. You see, it works in just one line. Review. Give yourself a pat on the back. You just navigated through functions. In this lesson, we covered some important concept about functions. A function is a reusable block of code that groups together a sequence of a statement to perform a specific task. A parameter is a name variable inside a function block which will be assigned to the value of the argument passed in when the function is invoked. ES6 introduced new ways of handling arbitrary parameters through default parameters, which allow us to assign a default value to a parameter in case no argument is passed into the function. To return a value from a function, we use a return statement. To define a function using function expression, to define a function using arrow function notation, and function definition can be made concise using concise arrow notation. It's good to be aware of the differences between function expression, arrow function, and function declaration. As you program more in JavaScript, you'll see a wide variety of how these function types are used. That's all about function part of JavaScript. I hope you learned a lot about function until next lesson. Bye bye.